Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear could save you years of heartbreak, confusion, and wasted energy. There are 5 specific phrases that, when a man says them to you, reveal his true intentions so clearly that ignoring them is like ignoring a fire alarm in your own house. These aren't just red flags, they're psychological manipulation tactics disguised as normal conversation. Once you learn to hear them, you'll never unhear them again. Stay until the end, because the 5th one is so subtle, yet so devastating, that most women miss it completely. It may be the single most important thing you learned this year about protecting your peace, your self-worth, and your future. Before we begin, why we miss these signs. Before diving into the 5 phrases, it helps to understand something that can change the way you interpret every conversation you have with a man from here on out. Many women have been raised to give the benefit of the doubt, to look for potential instead of reality, to try to heal a person instead of protecting themselves from harm. This conditioning runs so deep that it can dull our natural instinct to recognize when someone is testing our boundaries, chipping away at our confidence, or trying to make us question our own worth. Words are never just information. When someone speaks to you, they are also revealing their internal state, their intentions, and the level of respect or disrespect they hold for you. This is part of why certain conversations leave you feeling drained, foggy, or doubting yourself, even when you can't immediately explain why. Your intuition may be picking up on something your logical mind hasn't caught up to yet. What follows isn't just relationship advice. Think of it as a form of emotional self-defense, one that protects not only your heart, but your career, your friendships, your family relationships, your self-esteem, your finances, and even your physical health. The person you choose to let close to you touches every part of your life. Choose poorly, and you may spend years recovering from the damage. Learn to recognize the warning signs early, and you free up space for something far better to enter your life. Phrase 1. You're too sensitive. The first phrase that should make you pause immediately is some version of "you're too sensitive," "you're being dramatic," or "you're overreacting." This kind of statement is manipulation dressed up as an observation, because it's designed to make you doubt your own perception of reality. When a man brushes off your emotional response as excessive, he isn't really commenting on you. He's revealing that he struggles to handle a woman who knows her own mind and speaks up for herself. What's actually happening in that moment is a kind of test. He's checking whether you'll set aside your own emotional intelligence to keep him comfortable. He's seeing whether you'll make yourself smaller so he can feel bigger. Someone who genuinely cares about you responds to your feelings with curiosity, not dismissal. He asks questions, he listens, he tries to understand where you're coming from, even when he doesn't fully agree. When your natural emotional reactions get labeled as too much, what's really being communicated is that your comfort matters less than his. And the danger compounds over time. A small seed of self-doubt gets planted, and it grows. You start second-guessing every emotion, every gut feeling, every flash of intuition. You begin monitoring yourself constantly, wondering if you're being too much again. This is exactly the outcome an emotionally exploitative person wants: to disconnect you from your own internal guidance system, because your intuition is the very thing capable of protecting you from being taken advantage of. Many women only realize years later how much of their relationship with their own emotions they had to rebuild, because they'd been trained slowly and quietly to distrust what they actually felt. That kind of erosion is a serious form of harm, even though it often gets waved away as just how some men are. But emotionally mature, secure men don't operate this way. They understand that a woman's emotional depth isn't a flaw to be corrected, it's a strength to be respected. Phrase 2, I'm just being honest. The second phrase to watch for is "I'm just being honest," or "I'm just telling you the truth," especially when it follows a comment that was cruel, unnecessary, or clearly meant to hurt. This phrase turns cruelty into something that looks like a virtue. When someone weaponizes honesty, they aren't actually being honest. They're being unkind and trying to make you feel guilty for reacting to it. Real honesty comes from care. It's delivered with compassion, thoughtfulness, and attention to timing, not dropped on you like a weapon and then justified afterward. When a man says something deliberately hurtful and hides behind just being honest, it usually means one of two things. Either he lacks empathy, or he enjoys the power of hurting you and wants to make you responsible for your own pain. This pattern can be devastating to self-esteem over time. It often starts small. A comment about your appearance, your intelligence, your goals, your friends, your family, and grows into a pattern where any hurt you express gets flipped back onto you, as though you're the one being unreasonable for not appreciating his honesty. This can quietly convince you that love means tolerating cruelty and that asking for basic kindness makes you needy or difficult. The truth is simpler than that. A person who loves you wants to build you up, not tear you down. Difficult conversations are sometimes necessary in any relationship, but they happen with care, with the goal of strengthening the connection, not diminishing the other person. When someone repeatedly uses honesty as cover for cruelty, they're showing you quite clearly that your well-being isn't their priority. Real intimacy isn't built through dominance. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Honesty and kindness aren't opposites. In fact, honesty without compassion isn't really honesty at all. It's cruelty wearing honesty as a disguise. Phrase 3, you're being controlling. The third phrase is one that should set off every alarm bell you have. Being told you're controlling anytime you express a boundary, a need, or a concern about someone's behavior. This is gaslighting in one of its clearest forms, and its purpose is to make you afraid to advocate for yourself. When a reasonable request gets relabeled as controlling behavior, you're being quietly trained to stop asking for what you need. It's worth being very clear about what a boundary actually is. A boundary isn't a demand, and it isn't a punishment. It's simply a statement of what you need in order to feel safe, respected, and valued. Saying, please call if you're going to be late, or I wasn't comfortable with how that was said to me, or I need us to spend real undistracted time together. None of that is controlling. It's clarity about your own standards. When someone responds to a boundary by calling you controlling, they're revealing something important, that they value their own convenience more than your peace of mind, and that they see your needs as obstacles rather than useful information about how to treat you well. That is not a foundation for a healthy relationship. It's the foundation of a dynamic where you slowly lose yourself trying to avoid being labeled too much. The pattern this creates is heartbreaking to watch. Women in these situations often start shrinking their needs, minimizing their own discomfort and accepting treatment that goes against their values, all because they've been convinced that having standards is the same as being controlling. They start to take pride in being low maintenance without realizing they're actually abandoning themselves to accommodate someone who isn't holding up their end. A person who genuinely loves you wants to know your boundaries because they want to honor them. They understand that boundaries aren't limits on the relationship. They're the framework that makes real trust and intimacy possible. When you feel safe expressing your needs without being dismissed or mislabeled, you can actually relax into a relationship instead of managing it. Ironically, the people who call you controlling for having boundaries are often the same people who would take advantage of the fact that you don't enforce them. Phrase 4, I'm not ready for a relationship, while acting like you're in one. The fourth phrase is subtler but just as corrosive, I'm not ready for a relationship, or I don't want anything serious right now, said while he continues to behave exactly as though you're already in one. He texts constantly. He spends most of his free time with you. He introduces you to friends, maybe even family. He shares intimate details of his life, and builds all the emotional closeness of a real relationship, while explicitly telling you that's not what this is. This combination is a form of manipulation disguised as honesty. It lets him enjoy every benefit of having you in his life without any of the accountability that comes with actually choosing you. He gets your emotional support, your time, your attention, your affection, while keeping the freedom to walk away whenever he wants because he technically warned you up front. It's a genuinely difficult position to be in. Stay and you're accepting being treated as optional. Ask for more and you can be made to feel like you changed the rules. Leave and it can feel like you're walking away from something that might become real if you just wait a little longer. But here's the important part. When someone truly wants to be with you, there's no ambiguity about it. There's no lingering in not ready or not sure or let's see where this goes. Someone who recognizes your value moves toward you with intention and clarity. The people who keep you in relationship limbo generally aren't confused about what they want. They know exactly what they want, which is to have access to you without the responsibility of fully committing. This dynamic is painful precisely because it keeps you invested while slowly wearing down your sense of self-worth. It's easy to start believing you have to earn full commitment rather than simply deserving it. And often, the person doing this does care about you in a limited way. He just cares more about preserving his own options than about your happiness and security. Phrase 5. You've changed, and not in a good way. The fifth and most dangerous phrase is often delivered quietly, with a tone of disappointment. You've changed, but not in a good way. It implies that the person you're becoming is somehow worse than the person he first met. This phrase can be devastating because it's designed, intentionally or not, to make you retreat from your own growth in order to become more convenient for him again. When someone criticizes your growth this way, it often means he fell for the version of you that served his needs, not the version of you that's becoming fully yourself. Here's what's actually happening in these moments. You're growing. You're setting boundaries, chasing goals, speaking more honestly, becoming more confident. And instead of celebrating that evolution, he feels threatened by it. Because the earlier version of you was more manageable, more centered around him, less focused on your own expansion. This phrase cuts deep because it targets a very tender place, the need to be loved as you are. When someone implies that your growth is a kind of betrayal, it can create real confusion. You might start wondering whether becoming more yourself is worth risking the relationship over, or whether you should shrink back down to a size that felt safer for him. Countless women have quietly given up therapy, friendships, career ambitions, or personal growth because a partner made that growth feel like a threat to the relationship. But someone who genuinely loves you doesn't just tolerate your growth, they champion it. They feel proud watching you become more confident, more clear, more connected to your own purpose, because they understand that your growth doesn't threaten the relationship, it strengthens it. When someone criticizes you for changing, what they're really revealing is that they preferred a smaller version of you, that their affection was conditional on you staying the same. That isn't love, that's closer to possession, a desire to keep you rather than to admire who you're becoming. What to do with this information? Now that you've heard these 5 phrases and what they really mean, you might be feeling a mix of things: recognition of old patterns, new clarity about a current relationship, frustration that no one explained this sooner, or relief at finally understanding it. All of that is valid. This isn't meant to make you cynical about love or suspicious of every person you meet. It's about discernment. Learning to tell the difference between someone who genuinely cares about your well-being and someone who is mostly focused on what they can get from you. It's about trusting your intuition when something feels off, even before you can fully explain why. There are people who will never say these phrases to you because they understand that love is about building safety, not testing limits. People who appreciate your sensitivity as emotional intelligence, not a flaw. People who deliver hard truths with kindness. People who treat your boundaries as the foundation of intimacy, not an inconvenience. People who commit with clarity because they recognize your worth. People who love watching you grow because your growth adds to the relationship instead of threatening it. These people exist, but you're less likely to notice them if you're spending your energy rationalizing the behavior of someone who doesn't value you the way you deserve. Practical steps going forward. Start paying closer attention to how conversations with the people in your life actually leave you feeling. Do you feel energized or drained, seen and valued, or confused and diminished, encouraged to be more yourself or pressured to be smaller? Trust your first instinct rather than talking yourself out of it. If something feels off in the early weeks of getting to know someone, it usually is worth paying attention to. If you notice yourself constantly making excuses for someone's behavior, or trying to convince yourself their words meant something other than what they clearly meant, treat that as useful data. If you find yourself quietly changing your personality, your goals, or your standards to keep someone comfortable, that's telling you something important about the relationship you're in. Walking away from someone who consistently fails to value you isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. It doesn't mean giving up on love. It means making room for love that doesn't require convincing, shrinking, or settling. Every moment spent trying to convince someone to treat you well is a moment you're not available for someone who wouldn't need convincing at all. The right person won't need to be talked into choosing you. It will simply feel natural to them. A closing thought on boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls that keep love out. They're the gates that let the right love in. When you clearly communicate what you need in order to feel safe and valued, you're not being difficult. You're being clear about the conditions under which you can show up as your most generous, loving, authentic self. People who resist your boundaries usually aren't the people who belong in your life. The people who welcome your boundaries, who ask thoughtful questions about how to honor them, who genuinely adjust their behavior so you feel good around them, those are your people. They understand that love isn't about taking whatever they can get. It's about building something where both people can actually flourish. Every time you honor your own boundaries, you teach the people around you how to treat you. Every time you walk away from someone who dismisses your needs, you reinforce your own sense of worth, and that has ripple effects across every part of your life. This isn't about becoming closed off or hard to reach. It's about becoming clear and intentional about who gets access to your time, your energy, and your heart. Here's the final thought worth carrying with you. You are not responsible for healing people who hurt you. You are not responsible for teaching someone how to treat you properly. You are not required to stay in situations that dim your light simply because someone else isn't ready to grow. Your job isn't to be endlessly patient, endlessly understanding, endlessly forgiving to the point of losing yourself. Your job is to be authentic, to honor your own needs, trust your own intuition, and build a life that actually reflects your values. The kind of love you're looking for is looking for you too. But it can only find you once you stop settling for less than what you deserve, and once you stop making yourself smaller, quieter, or easier to keep, just to hold on to someone who was never fully choosing you in the first place.